The battle is on. Malaysia's 15th general election is underway as candidates contesting in all 222 parliamentary seats are confirmed. Now, this hotly contested election will see several multi-cornered fights, especially in key battleground states where the three biggest coalitions, Barisan Nasional, Pakatan Harapan and Perikatan Nasional, will vie for a spot in Malaysia's parliament and a chance to form the country's government. Pakatan Harapan is contesting the most number of seats, 206, followed by Barisan Nasional with 178 seats, and then Perikatan Nasional with 149 seats. Some key battleground states to watch out for. In Bera in Pahang, caretaker Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob will be facing two challenges. The Tambun ward in Perak, opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim is going up against the incumbent MP PN's Ahmad Faizal Azumu, who is also a Tambun local. Also in Perak State, the Bagan Datuk ward sees UMNO chief Ahmad Zahid Hamidi challenged by three others. And 97-year-old Mahathir Mohamad is defending his Langkawi seat in his 11th general election outing against four rivals.
I hope Langkawi people will vote Pajuan!
And nomination centres across Malaysian candidates and supporters traded barbs. PN candidate Ahmad Faizal Azumu was called a traitor by PH supporters. Now, he had contested under the PH ticket in the 2018 general election before defecting to PN this election. In response, the incumbent Tambun MP declared his love for PH supporters. Things also heated up outside the nomination centre in Ternum, Sabah, as police fired tear gas at a big group of supporters who caused a commotion. This after their party president, Peter Anthony's nomination papers were rejected. According to Malaysian media, his nomination was rejected as he was convicted of forging documents in relation to a system maintenance contract in May. He is appealing the case. I met with Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh to get his insights. Shannon, first of all, your thoughts on the finalized candidates for this general election. Any surprises? Anything that stood out for you?
I wouldn't say surprises necessarily, right? Because a lot of the things that we were looking out for today, this was actually all the drama in the past week, right? I mean, there was a lot of unhappiness at the candidate slates that were being announced by the various parties. A lot of well-known leaders found that they were dropped from the list. So they were going around the country saying that this is not the right thing, I'm still going to defend my seat, so on and so forth. And today we saw that it actually did happen. There is obviously someone from PKR, Anwar Ibrahim's party. He was a two-term Batu MP, and that's a seat just nearby us in Kuala Lumpur. So he's going to stand against the actual PKR candidate and from all the other parties. It's a crazy seat. There's going to be 10 candidates there, right? So it's obviously a lot of people are going to be disappointed. In fact, we're looking at people possibly losing their deposit because they can't get enough votes. It's going to be a very tightly fought seat. But more importantly, I think for UMNO, right, it dropped a lot of warlords, a lot of very influential people, a lot of people who are influential in their little regions where they are. And very importantly, up in Perlis, now this is a state UMNO has never lost, right? And they've dropped Shahidan Kasim. Now, he was a long-time chief minister there, and he is actually a caretaker minister right now. So he's gone out not only to contest as an independent, that's what most guys would do if they're unhappy with their parties. He's actually gone and joined the opponents there, Perikatan Nasional, right? Perikatan Nasional actually has a very good chance of winning the state now, and this might be the first time UMNO actually loses Perlis. So these are things that actually change the political calculation, right? We've got approval ratings, we've got a lot of analysis about who might win more seats, fewer seats, which regions are they stronger in. But the local aspect, right, when there could be potential sabotage, there could be potentially a leader from your own party saying, don't vote for my party, that's going to change the matrix quite a fair bit. So it's going to be an election that was already too close to call. Now it's just going to get messier, and I'm happy that I just have to report the facts and not just try and tell you and predict things, because I really don't know what's going to happen.
I want to zoom in on the figures, Shannon. Caretaker PM Ismail Sabri says his BN coalition is confident of winning the majority of seats this election and being the dominant party in government. Looking at the candidates and competition, is this a possibility?
Well, I think no one goes into a competition and say they're going to lose, right? No one's going to say that. And of course, you say you're going to, in an election contest, you will say that I'm going to form the majority so that just my coalition alone, we can form the next government. Everyone's going to say that. But I think realistically, none of the coalitions are very confident of hitting the magic number. We're talking about 112 out of the 222 parliamentary seats, and that gives you a simple majority, right? I think the game here is who is going to be the biggest, right? Even though you don't cross that number. So we have three main coalitions. If you, the idea is that if you hit about 80, 90 seats, you'll definitely be bigger than the other two. And that puts you in the pole position to form government. And I think for Barisan Nasional, that's a realistic target. Be bigger than the rest. Hitting simple majority on their own, I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
Opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim is contesting in Tambun, a new seat for him. Now he's up against incumbent Ahmad Faizal, who is a Tambun local. Now we have said that this election could be his final bid in becoming PM. What are his chances in Tambun and finally heading the government?
Well, let's talk about Tambun first, right? So Anwar's not from Perak. He's going up against not just a local, but Faizal, or Peja as locals call him. Peja was the Menteri Besar, right? So he was the Chief Minister of the state. He's also the caretaker Youth and Sports Minister. He's also Bersatu, which is Muhyiddin Yassin's party. He's the Deputy President there. So this is not just some local guy, right? It's a guy who's got a lot of political office behind him. He used to be with UMNO in pretty high up circles. He used to be political secretary for some big figures in Barisan Nasional as well. So it's going to be an interesting battle, right? Anwar is basically signaling that if we want to win and if I want to form government, and this comes to the second question, then we've got to beat all these guys, got to win the tough seats, right? So I'm going to go into one of the tough seats, right? So he's, in a sense, leading by example. And whether they can form government is again the same question like the Barisan Nasional question, right? Can you be the most dominant bloc? And perhaps for Pakatan Harapan, there is an added complication. If you look at the status of Parliament just before the dissolution last month, right, on October 10, Pakatan Harapan was the biggest bloc. They had 90 MPs, they had more than everyone else. How come they weren't in government, right? Well, because in Malaysia, the politics works such that no one really wanted to work with Anwar Ibrahim or with one of his component parties, Democratic Action Party. There is this race element involved, right? And they felt that they've been talking to their supporters so much about how DAP is going to undermine Malay Muslim interests. So UMNO, PAS, Bersatu, these mainly Malay majority parties, they find it very difficult to work or to convince their supporters that it's okay to work with Pakatan Harapan. So we'll have to see after the November 19 vote how they can kind of, if it's necessary, how they can kind of shift that rhetoric. And maybe even this campaign over the next 2 weeks, that kind of view of DAP might change.
Now, over in Langkawi, former PM Mahathir Mohamad is set to defend his seat. Dr. Mahathir told reporters he is contesting because he has unfinished business. He also did not rule out the possibility of working with others, but with conditions. Now, let's have a listen.
We intend to work with other parties, but they must be clean parties, not led by crooks and jailbirds and all that.
Parties that are not led by, quote, crooks and jailbirds. Shannon, your thoughts on his comments? What is he implying there?
Can you imagine, Jan, when you're 97 years old, you have unfinished business? I hope I finish all my business by the time I'm 60, let alone 97. But what he is talking about is the fact that he came back into politics, right? He retired in 2003. 15 years later, he had to come back, be Prime Minister again because of this 1MDB scandal, right? Which had afflicted, Najib Razak, the former Prime Minister. Now, Najib is in jail. So when he's talking about a jailbird politically, we know who he's talking about. We know the UMNO president, Zahid Hamidi, who replaced Najib as UMNO chief. He's facing a multitude of graft charges as well, I think about 47. And the verdict was supposed to be due by the beginning of next year, right? That case is still ongoing. So these are the people he's referring to, and when you surmise all that, you put it together, he means that it's very difficult to work with UMNO. If UMNO is going to be led by people who have corruption charges, or even someone like Najib who's still very influential, still pulling the strings from jail as it were, right? So that's, I think, what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is that if his coalition called GTA, but largely his own party, Pejuang, right, are able to have a few MPs, if they are going to go into a coalition or to form government in one of their other main coalitions, it's very unlikely that it's going to be Barisan Nasional. That's why he's signaling. He's signaling to Perikatan, he's signaling to Pakatan, and in fact the parties out in East Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak, that's if we can form a government that doesn't involve UMNO, because they're being led by, in his words, crooks and jailbirds, right?
As with every election campaign, there will be promises and pledges. So today, for instance, Muhyiddin says PN is ready to offer Malaysians a clean and stable government. Will that have any traction with voters? And what are some key issues that the election results are likely to turn on? And if I have to ask Shannon as well, what will you be watching out for in the next 2 weeks before Malaysians go to the poll on November 19th?
I think the last two questions, probably the same question, right? What will it turn on is exactly what we'll be looking at. I mean, this campaign promises about being free of corruption. No one's going to go out there and say that I'm going to be a corrupt government, right? So everyone's going to say that we're going to be anti-corruption and so on and so forth. But who actually has the credentials to talk about that? Clearly not Barisan Nasional, given their background and all the attacks against Barisan Nasional. So I think for Barisan Nasional, they campaign on kind of peace and prosperity, economic stability, so on and so forth. For Perikatan Nasional, I think Muhyiddin saying that is kind of like having a bit of each thing, right? This whole idea of we are against corruption, but we can also offer stability. Barisan Nasional is not the only one. Now, whether he can put the narrative across is going to be a big challenge. After all, when he was Prime Minister just for 18 months, so obviously he could not provide stability, right? I'm not saying that it's necessarily his fault, but it's not something where, it's not a promise where you have the track record to back it. Neither can Pakatan Harapan also kind of back a slogan like stability. So in fact, Pakatan has a completely different narrative altogether, right? They are looking at a lot of economic reforms, in fact, pushing very hard towards the youth vote, promising jobs, lower cost housing, things like that, right? So everyone is going on attacking this election at a different angle. I think it's going to hinge on 2 or 3 very key messages, right? One is the question of inflation, right? And like many other countries in the world, we've hit very high levels of inflation this year, and this is coming off the back of a pandemic. So you've just come out of one economic crisis, hoping that you survive, and then you start going out and you see that all the prices are a lot higher. It's really difficult, right? So it's an economic message, but a lot hinging on inflation. Corruption is still there, right? That question hasn't gone away, and the fact that we have more younger voters this time because of Undi 18, lowered the voting age to 18 from 21. A lot of younger voters, I wouldn't say surprisingly or unsurprisingly, they seem to be more concerned with things like corruption and climate change, very forward-thinking. In fact, I like to say that they are very concerned about the world after the boomers have ruined it, right? So now they want to see, how can we fix the world? We need to fix these 2 big C's, right? Climate change and corruption. So for the different segments, there are different concerns, but I think it's largely those kind of issues, right? And when you talk about inflation, yes, you're talking about fiscal policy, things like whether we're going to reintroduce GST, you know, that's what people talk about. Is it going to cause even more price hikes? How can this government sustain things like subsidies? What is the economic program for, as we were talking about, creating more jobs, you know, lowering the cost of housing, so on and so forth. So it is going to be quite bread and butter. I think the personality politics isn't going to be so strong this time because, to be very honest, if you go out to the average Malaysian, a lot of them wouldn't say that I'm a big supporter of candidate A or B. They have a preferred candidate, but I don't think it's because I'm a big fan, right? There isn't in that sense, the Mahathir effect that we used to have maybe even in 2018.
Shannon, thank you for your perspectives. ST's Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teoh. Follow our coverage of Malaysia's 15th general election on our website straitstimes.com/Malaysia-election. Now head over to our YouTube channel for more videos as well. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking the red subscribe button. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.